To discuss the real issues affecting Australia and New Zealand, this is Trad Tasman Talk, jointly produced by the Unshackled.net and the Mr. Berry Show. Now here are Tim Wilms and Stephen Berry, live from Melbourne.
Hello everybody and welcome to the last Trad Tasman Talk before Christmas 2021. It is Friday the 17th of December. It is Tim Wilms, Editor-in-Chief of the Unshackled, here in Melbourne, where it is 6 p.m. on a very warm day where I got a lot of that vitamin D to protect myself against improve my immune system against whether it be Delta or Omicron or whatever else is floating around the place.
And I'm Stephen Berry from the Mr. Berry Show, also in Melbourne. And after 20 years in retail, I think I would have heard every goddamn Christmas carol possible, plus the 10 versions of each Christmas carol possible. And now in Australia, I've discovered that Australia has its own versions of Christmas carols with didgeridoos and kangaroos and Aussie Christmases and things on the Barbie, and they're equally bad. But fortunately, there's a lot of other better things about Australia, including, ironically, the freedoms that we have under Dan Andrews in Melbourne that New Zealanders don't.
Yes, New Zealand under the COVID protection framework, your life can change at the whim of Jacinta claiming that she's acting under the advice when we know from history she's not acting under the advice of the Director General of Public Health, Ashley Bloomfield. So from Thursday, 30th of December, pretty much all of New Zealand will go orange. So
just in time for December 2022.
January 2022.
No, I was thinking of next Christmas.
But yeah, Auckland will turn orange, and so will the other parts of the North Island, except from Northland, because their vaccination rate is not as high as the other, the district health boards. And so the reason that Northland stays at red is because, a socialist government, their number one priority is to protect people who won't protect themselves because they know better the state.
Yeah, and I guess if you're an advocate of government protecting people from COVID and having checkpoints, etc., well, then theoretically Northland just got a whole lot unsafer, or maybe safer depending on your perspective, because the iwi checkpoints leading into Northland, which have been staffed by notorious racist Hone Harawira, who used to be leader of the Mana Party, and a whole lot of his friends, some who like to don mongrel mob gang attire. Now that the iwi checkpoints, which were tolerated for 18 months by the police, have actually been formally legalised, meaning that now people on those checkpoints are subject to police vetting, and they've lost 60% of their checkpoint staffers because they can't pass a police vetting.
Larry Rude, it's not Soviet New Zealand, it's New Zealand. Obviously, New Zealand is the closest nation to emulating communist China, both in its COVID elimination policy, which also means the elimination of human rights, and basically its foreign policy as well.
Well, actually, they're also the closest that the social credit movement's ever got into success in New Zealand as well. So that's a double whammy. The most left-wing government since Robert Muldoon, perhaps more left-wing than Robert Muldoon, actually, with their plans to inflate the economy with big think big projects. Only problem is they're too stupid to get any of them off the ground, even these so-called shovel-ready. And then they're trying to inflate the economy by borrowing from the Reserve Bank for these things. So it's a double whammy of the pre-1984 market reforms all combined at once, with the government with the least ability to implement any of them.
Colin asked, Stephen, what do you think of Australia opening its international borders with no restrictions or tests? That's not actually true, Colin. The federal government, they did proceed with, further easing of the international borders, allowing migrant workers, international students, and refugees in, but there's still that 72 hour quarantine rule where they have to they have to get a test before they come, and then a test on arrival, isolate for 3 days, and they have to get, I think, another test on day 5, 7. This is in the states which are accepting international non-Australian travellers, which is New South Wales, Victoria, and the ACT, have to get tested on day 5, 7, and not allowed to enter any high-risk settings. So
it could have been a theoretical question. If they're coming from nations which have relatively low risk, I would have the process of entering the country to be as streamlined as quickly as possible, just ensuring that if someone comes in with COVID, it's picked up as they enter the border at the very least. But we definitely need to open up those borders as quickly as possible.
Though there's no way of stopping whether it be Delta or Omicron getting through the border. I mean, the states of Australia that have semi-opened, South Australia, Queensland, even though they have the testing regime, they're still recording lots of local cases. South Australia today had 64 new local cases. They've got one person in hospital. I think Queensland had around 20. Tasmania, they just opened a couple of days ago there. Though obviously the news coming out of Tasmania has been quite tragic, with those 5 primary school children horrifically, tragically dying in that jumping castle last day of school accident. That's just been absolutely beyond words comprehension. It's just been so tragic.
Yeah, that's horrible. And I would have thought you would tie bouncer councils down. I'm not an expert.
I don't think we should sort of preempt any sort of investigation and that. But it's just been a terrible tragedy.
How's Western Australia getting on? Is the Iron Desert still doing the job?
Since Malgowan, Magulag, McLeod, whatever you want to call him, he's not opening up the fortress until February the 5th. So the hard border is as hard as ever now. So this was his update. Following the evolving situation in Queensland and Tasmania, the Chief Health Officer has provided health advice that we need to elevate border restrictions for these 2 jurisdictions. So Queensland is now medium risk, and Tasmania is low risk, which basically means the hard border goes up there. And now they also have a high risk category, which New South Wales was in. But now, since New South Wales today recorded over 2,000 new local cases, both New South Wales and Victoria are extreme risk. So they have not just the high risk, but extreme risk.
Get a Mountain Dew.
Have they got a super mega ultra extreme, very high risk category?
So Western Australia is basically the COVID equivalent of North Korea, except unlike North Korea, they're actually keeping it out. But I would say that getting from South Australia to Perth is probably a bit more daunting an experience than crossing the river from China to North Korea.
Well, yes, the Nullarbor is quite the journey. There's no border towns on the South Australia, Western Australia border. Obviously, we have there's border towns in between New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, New South Wales, Queensland, New South Wales, South Australia. So. Yes, so WA has that advantage of being basically the last place in Australia. New Zealand, of course, was going well at elimination until, well, the highly hyper infectious Delta variant. It's pretty much been able to evade all hotel quarantine systems. I mean, it's still amazing that all the Delta that's in New South Wales, Victoria, ACT, and New Zealand came from this limo driver in Sydney back in June, and which is why it's really stupid for New Zealand to have an Omicron zero strategy. They've got 4 Omicron cases in their MIQ, and they're going to get
so it's quadrupled in a day.
Yeah, and yeah, they're going to get more, and it's going to escape.
Yeah. How many months ago did you stop caring? Because it's been a long time for me.
In terms of, what is it, cases or?
Yeah, about case numbers and trying to stop the pandemic spreading, etc. I'm over it, and I would say that an enormous proportion of Australians are, based on the regular protests going through Melbourne, which way outnumber the counter-protests from the pro-union, pro-vax, anti-fascist,
anti-freedom, pro-lockdown, pro-COVID zero people.
Yeah.
But obviously, the COVID zero cultists, extremists, they're in a new tiers because of Omicron, which is like as if you're going to stop it. It's even more infectious than Delta. We knew that, and the evidence keeps coming out that it's extremely mild. And well, over in the UK, where they're absolutely freaking out over it, still only one person has died with Omicron, and we finally found out a bit more information. A stepson of the first person to die with Omicron phoned into LBC. I assume LBC, being a respectable radio station in the UK, did their due diligence there. So apparently he refused to get the jab after being taken in by anti-vaxxer conspiracy theorists. So he was not vaccinated, let alone he had no jabs, let alone 2 or 3.
Bit of an intelligent person, according to the stepson, but I would differ.
Yeah, so this is the only confirmed person in the entire world that's died with Omicron. I mean, he was 70 years old. Obviously, it's like 70 is still sort of young-ish these days, considering how long
about
humans
a decade off the average life expectancy.
I mean, today we had a Victorian in their 100s who died with COVID, and getting to 100, that's a good innings.
Yeah, well, you all seem to think so, but perhaps not by the time you're actually at 100. Yeah, if the baby dies, you go, oh no, it's a tragedy. But if your nana dies, you go, how old was she? 95? Oh, well, she had it coming.
Yeah, just got some breaking news now that New South Wales and Victoria have eased the 72-hour isolation requirement for fully vaccinated travellers arriving from overseas, which means that as soon as they get off the plane, they can just go. Well, they still have to refrain from high risk settings and get tested on day 5-7, but they can pretty much, go to the shops and go for a walk outside and stay in their accommodation. So, what is that? Trending on Twitter is "Let It Rip, Dom," because Dominic Perrottet, New South Wales Premier, is pretty pro-freedom, but it's also "Let It Rip, Dan" as well.
Oh, it's funny because Jacinda Ardern accused National Party leader Chris Luxon of letting it rip, so she's probably ripped that off from the other two.
But going back to Omicron, I recall the chief medical officer Paul Kelly saying that if it is a more mild version which is going to replace Delta, then it'd be a good Christmas present, which is how we should view it. And this is what former Deputy Chief Medical Officer Dr. Nick Coatsworth said a couple of weeks ago, and he's maintained this position.
If this is milder than Delta, you actually want it to spread within your community. You want it to outcompete Delta and become the predominant circulating virus.
I could see why he doesn't do his old job anymore.
Well, yeah, he gets to speak his mind, like he is now. He's hated by the COVID zero cultists. I noticed that Crescio said incentive sticks, because when he was Deputy Chief Medical Officer, he talked about incentive sticks to get people vaccinated, but I'm sure he was just towing the government line at the time.
Incentive sticks?
Yeah, he was talking about sticks to, back people to get the jabs. You know how in government, especially during the COVID, the COVID lockdowns and mandates and that, there's either the carrot incentive or the stick threat.
Oh, right. Meanwhile, people like you and me who just did it when it was available get absolutely fucking nothing. Except for not dying, I guess.
Well, we're going to be encouraged, nudged, probably in the end mandated to get our booster in 5 months now is the recommendation from Atagi. Now, last week on one of my shows, I spoke about how I got the Australian government COVID booster letter, and I got another one this week from them, a second one. Did
you read it in Scott Morrison's voice before you realised he had signed it at the bottom? I did.
It was signed by Scott Morrison, Greg Hunt, and Paul Kelly, the chief medical officer. Now, I wouldn't be due for my booster for another 3 months. So I don't know. Are they just going to keep sending me more and more? It sort of reminds me of in the first Harry Potter, when Uncle Vernon doesn't let Harry open his Hogwarts acceptance letter, and then they just all keep coming. I wonder if that's going to happen here, and then it'll eventually there'll just be this flood of booster Australian government letters coming into my house, or they might even give me a howler if I don't get my booster on time, saying, "Tim Wilms, how dare you not take that booster? We are absolutely disgusted. The COVID cases are increasing, and it's entirely your fault."
Well, I got it electronically. I mean, after my second vaccination, I kept on getting weekly reminders from my GP, who should have known better.
They must just seem to be wanting to cover themselves. It's just we'll just keep pumping the text messages out. Because what is it? There's the daily vaccination figures I notice are upticking in New South Wales and Victoria, which I assume is the boosters. And we had the chief health officer of New South Wales, Miss New World Order, Kerry Chant, talk about what you should shop for Christmas.
Or is on the best available evidence at this point in time is boosters. And I've seen even this morning some additional data coming in, which really emphasises the urgency. So I would recommend that instead of Christmas shopping, everyone shops for a COVID booster online.
Jesus Christ, it looks like the school principal's lost her rag at a bunch of unruly boys in the assembly, doesn't it?
Yeah, so maybe I should just view this as a Christmas card from the government saying that you should, shop, treat yourself to a booster for Christmas.
I thought they were free.
Well, it's a complimentary gift from the government. Maybe
They don't give a
that's
fuck about the economy. Just buy free things from the government. That's all we want you to do.
But this press conference with Kerry Chant, Brad Hazard, and Dominic Perrottet, it was on Wednesday when the restrictions in New South Wales were relaxed as promised. So no masks in New South Wales retail and hospitality and elsewhere, only on public transport, hospitals, aged care, and aeroplanes. And what is it? Kerry Chant, being the bureaucratic zealot that she is, say still keep wearing your mask even though it's not mandatory now. And she was asked, how come you're saying people to wear masks when it's not mandatory? And it's like, oh, because we're asking people to take personal responsibility, which is what public health advice should, it should always just be advice, recommendations. It shouldn't be mandated.
Yeah, here's what we know. Do with it what you will. And your tax dollars will pay for the consequences.
I noticed that what Katie Hopkins called the mask perverts, they were in a meltdown because New South Wales ditch masks. And of course you can still wear a mask or double, triple mask. You can still wear a mask alone in your car if you want, or you can wear one outside when it's 28 degrees. I noticed one of the leftist cartoonist, Kathy Wilcox. I thought she was so clever with this cartoon. Oh my God, it's so good to be out and about again. I know, right? I was so over masks. Check-ins were so super inconvenient because I've got rid of them in supermarkets and other retail, I'll say. And then, the COVID spikes everywhere, because that's how COVID looks around. It's just these giant invisible spiky balls.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the checkpoints, check-ins eventually going in Victoria. I'm sick of having to isolate for a day every 2 weeks when my gym sends me a message saying that I'm now a close contact yet again.
Well, that's what we call the pingdemic, and this is why there's so many more. The reason why cases are so high in New South Wales at the moment, because there's over 100,000 now getting tested. Because they're all getting the notifications that they're a casual contact. And what is that? Obviously the cases have been highest in the Newcastle Hunter region because of this super spreader event at the Argyle Street nightclub, where an Omicron case went. And it's called the biggest super spreader event in the world, because it's seeded more than 200 infections in one night. And the head
was this the gay nightclub?
No, this is a straight just a normal nightclub in Newcastle.
Because it used to be that AIDS was a super spreader in gay nightclubs.
The head of the local health district in the Newcastle Hunter New England region. I'll just see if I can find what he said here. Yeah, Dr. Durham he said here that where's the bit that I was go further up here. It basically said that loud music spreads the virus quicker. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't completely rule that out, but I would have thought that yelling and dancing and close proximity with lots of sweating might have more to do with it.
Yeah, and so in Melbourne, we've had 29 cases linked to an Omicron infected patron going to two gay nightclubs in Melbourne. One was the Circuit Bar, the other one was the Peel and hotel in Fitzroy. And the owner of the Peel Hotel, Tom McFeely, he expressed his frustration in an interview on local station 3AW, given that a whole chunk of his staff were forced into 7 days of isolation because it's an Omicron case, and so he's had to shut again, and he's been basically shut for a lot of the past 2 years because of the lockdowns. Tom McFeely, he's an old Scottish gay, and he ran for the Liberal Party for the state seat of Richmond at the 2010 state election. Didn't win, of course, because it's a really safe Labor seat there. But he's a Tory gay.
Yeah, and his surname's probably off-putting. McFeely.
And a non-Scottish socialist as well.
Well, there's a rarity.
So there's 185 Omicron that have been genomically sequenced in New South Wales and 19 in Victoria. And we had on Wednesday Martin Foley say, because of Omicron, we're going to keep masks in retail for another month, but the unvax can go non-essential retail shopping. So they got some crumbs.
Sorry, I lost my place there. Moving on to in terms of the policy setting and with COVID as well. Did you see that the Rebel MP who was kicked out of the Victorian Labor Party has been painting probably a not very nice picture of Dan Andrews and the way he runs his cabinet each cabinet meeting? Apparently he likes to start off each meeting by reminding everybody about his social media reach.
Yes, because he has the most Facebook likes of any leader in the country, and we know that social media equates to real life. So yes, Adam
does for the left.
Yeah, was expelled from the Labor Party after the branch stacking revelations on 60 Minutes in 2020. Now that the IVAG hearings have concluded, he's now speaking out and is on the warpath with Dan, and they have been factional adversaries for many years. So, Adam Somniak was the leader of the right faction in the southeast, Dan Andrews from the socialist left.
So it sounds like Dan Andrews has a big flash car as well as a huge social media extension. And he likes to get his social media team in at the start of each cabinet meeting so that they can back up just how awesome his social media is, and then get a pat on the head from Dan for all their fantastic efforts.
Yeah. And so the cabinet, they all say, yes, this is awesome. Hail the dear leader. And of course, there's already been pre-selection bloodbaths for the next state election because of the branch stacking revelations. They decided to suspend democracy in the party and hand over administration of the state Labor branch to the federal executive. So they're deciding all the pre-selections, and not surprisingly, all Adam Somniak's, those aligned with Adam Somniak's faction. A few have decided to retire. Some have lost their pre-selection. Some who weren't even aligned with him, who were just from the right, such as Eddie Maguire's brother, Frank Maguire, lost pre-selection for the seat of Broadmeadows. He grew up in Broadmeadows, Frank Maguire, the Maguires, but now lives in Brighton. So
Cardinal sin. So it looks like the Labor Party's getting ready for 2022 with the Jeremy Corbyn approach.
And that's another thing that Adam Somniak has highlighted, that most of the Labor MPs don't even live in the electorates. They live miles away.
Oh, that's pretty usual for MPs, I guess. But if you're going to be on the hard left of the Labor Party, maybe get your Chardonnay clean skin rather than top shelf.
And the treason prosecution against Dan Andrews was over before it even began today. So this was the Myrtleford Magistrates Court. They agreed to hear private prosecution charges of concealing treason and fraud. Though it descended into a circus as thousands joined the court live stream to express their disdain for the Victorian Premier. This is a real news report. For almost an hour, court staff struggled to gain control as thousands were able to join the stream, with many with their cameras running. One participant even dressed as Santa Claus, while another managed to take over the court screen, sharing a dictator Dan meme with a Photoshop image of the state's leader dressed as North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un.
On the chicken farm was quite popular too, I understand.
Yes. So obviously, this magistrates' court didn't put measures in place to anticipate the people who might want to join the virtual court hearing.
Well, considering it looks like it's out of a really isolated country town building, and dozens of attempts to have Andrews prosecuted for treason privately before have all been thrown out. This is about the furthest step it's gone, and I understand that the charges were thrown out at the hearing stage, but nobody really knows what happened, and they don't know why the charges were thrown out.
Yeah, so it was brought forward by Jim Wretch and Desi Freeman. That's quite an appropriate name, Freeman. A pair of anti-lockdown campaigners. Their charge against Dan Andrews was rejected on several occasions, but this time, the court agreed to hear it, but they threw the matter out today without explanation. Or Dan Andrews, he wasn't required to be there. People claimed that he isolated and got tested because of an exposure in an event to avoid attending the hearing, but he didn't need to attend. It was just a coincidence that he's on leave anyway.
Yeah, 2 months of holidays from about now, I would imagine.
So we're going to move on to non-COVID matters now, because while Australia and, New South Wales and Victoria are pretty much open, the infrastructure of both states is, crumbling. Because we have, first of all, I'll bring it up here. Melbourne City Loop is going to be shut down for a long overdue safety fix. So in the
now,
coming
is this
months,
the tram loop or is this the underground?
Yeah, this is the underground Melbourne City train loop. So apparently the fire and safety issues, the Age says that they revealed them in 2011, were supposed to be resolved with a $43 million fix announced by the former Liberal Napthine government in 2014, but they were unfinished. So the collapse of a contractor hired to complete the repair stalled the work, leaving scaffolding around parts of Parliament Station and Flagstaff Gardens there. So that's nice to know that the government has neglected safety upgrades for a decade.
Because they're also extending underground rail still. How long has that been going on for?
Well, that's the the metro tunnel, which is it's going to go through the city loop. It goes there's going to be it begins as a station at the Shrine of Remembrance, then goes to Town Hall, State Library, then to Melbourne University in Parkville, and then goes on. So it cuts through the city loop, goes under the Yarra. That's apparently going to be finished by 2025 as part of the Victoria's big build you're talking about. What was it? Robert Muldoon, New Zealand Prime Minister. What is it? The Think Big.
Think Big, yeah.
But
the Labor government that's trying to emulate that, but it's far too incompetent to spend any of the money. Take their cycling bridge, proposed cycling bridge across Auckland Harbour, which was going to cost $785 million. They spent $51 million planning it and then cancelling it.
Well, the Andrews Labor government, they actually do build the infrastructure, but albeit it comes with a significant price tag, because obviously they've got to satisfy all the stakeholders, including their union mates, and so there's been constant cost blowouts. And the Westgate Tunnel that they've promised, this hasn't started. It's been plagued by where to dump toxic soil that they dug up. So there's been another cost blowout of another 1.9 billion
on top of
the
2.2.
Yes. What's now going to cost, I think, around 5.5 billion in total. No,
I'd managed to cost a second crossing across the Auckland Harbour and a motorway linking it up to the Albany Expressway for that amount of money.
So Transurban, which is one of the toll operators, they're contributing 2.2 billion to the project in exchange for charging Victorians more tolls for another 50 years.
Yeah, that seems fine to me.
Yeah, and that's going to be the case.
It's just a pity about all the other government spending aspect alongside it.
They also haven't started yet the northeast freeway link. That's also going to be tolls for, I think, 50 years. But obviously the level crossing removal projects, they've proceeded quite well. And the Mordialloc Freeway opened this month, which had been penciled into the state government's into the state's freeway system for over 30 years, but it's finally done. Now, I've driven on it, and it's pretty awesome. But they're upgrading the Monash Freeway now, extending the lanes, and so to expand more lanes, you've got to close most of the lanes. And so on the Monash Freeway, which is the main freeway from the southeast into the city, it's just a nightmare.
No, well, I don't get to experience many freeways being public transport bound at least this stage, but maybe you have to show me one day.
But as I mentioned, all these cost blowouts, they affect the state bottom line, and so the budget deficit has blown out another 19.5 billion, which is a lot for a state government.
Pushing the $200 billion levels of debt now. And they think they will be back to surplus in 2 years. Bloody bullshit.
Yes, Treasury modelling is about as accurate as COVID modelling and climate modelling as well. Because what is that? The COVID modelling is the most recent modelling to they got in the UK. They're predicting a gazillion cases a day by Christmas Day.
Well, they're up to about 79,000 now, I understand.
88,000. So that's because they're testing more people. Which, if you line up for 5 hours to get tested, whether it be in Sydney or Newcastle or in London, if you're positive, then you'll be spending Christmas alone stuck in your home under house arrest. That's your reward.
And if you were negative, that may no longer be the case if you've waited in that line for 5 hours.
With all the other potentially positive people. But if you wear a mask, maybe double, triple mask, then you should be safe.
I saw a guy a couple of rows away from me removing his mask to blow his nose several times, and that's when I decided maybe I'll do my test on the weekend.
Oh, there's also the rapid antigen tests now, which you can get for $10, $15 in a 5-pack for $50. And Patricia Karvelis, host of the ABC News afternoon briefing and the new host in 2022 of Radio National's breakfast program, said, one of the new romantic things me and my partner do every morning is rapid test each other for COVID-19. This pandemic just keeps on giving.
I guess they could both spit into the same test kit, couldn't they? Because if one's positive, so is the other.
I don't know what is that like if it's if it's some lesbian kinky thing that they do. I don't want to know.
No, that was a horrible thought. But I'm just trying to be practical and positive.
Yeah, I wonder if the gays who've had to isolate because they were at that nightclub have also requested anal swab PCR testing.
Well, they've been trying so long to get jabbed with the COVID vaccine so that they can get back to getting jabbed with AIDS. So, yeah, I'm sure they're very disappointed.
Patricia Karvelis, she also posted previously on Twitter that she flies double masked and getting a COVID vaccine was the happiest day of her life.
Wow. Her husband must be quite a disappointment.
I just said that she's a lesbian, so...
Oh, right. Well, okay, yeah. Well, it's probably been the first thing she's ever been jabbed with, so no wonder. Moving along.
Moving on to, yes,
we were talking economics.
Yeah, the budget infrastructure situation is not much better in New South Wales as well. They decided after, 50 years ago, tearing up all their tram tracks, the New South Wales Liberal government has decided to rebuild the tram tracks. So the Inner West trams have been taken offline, out of the loop. So the Spanish manufacturer of Sydney's cracked trams warned the New South Wales government that shark trap bends had contributed to faults, while new documents show questions raised in the Transport Department over standard track maintenance. So this has been a scandal that has been brewing. The government last week began trialling CBD trams on the Inner West tracks, which runs from Dulwich to Central Station. Early tests had proven successful, said the root cause of the cracking still being investigated. So, yeah, they apparently won't resume properly until February there. And their light rail through George Street in Sydney had cost blowouts, destroyed businesses there, and broke down on the first day. And
they should count themselves lucky because in Auckland, the Dominion Road tramway has destroyed businesses all the way along the proposed route, and they still haven't laid a single rail yet.
Yes, so New South Wales Liberal government has had their own big build with cost blowouts as well. So who knew that government centralised big builds, 5-year infrastructure plans, whatever you want to call them, would go way over budget, and there'd be delays and safety issues as well.
And things are no better at federal government level in terms of deficit spending either. We're looking at adding another $300 billion onto the debt.
Oh well, the federal government's debt and deficit's just going to keep going up. But the New South Wales government, they had bragged that they were in a surplus, but because one of their rail corporations could unravel because of these. Well, it's not just the trams that have issues, but the rail corporation, the transport asset holding entity, has significant accounting issues to the tune of $40 billion. So Treasury warned in a confidential document that any attempt to abolish TTT would create a $14.6 billion hole in the budget over the next 10 years, which would wipe away their budget deficit. I think I'm right when I said it's if it went under, it would be $40 billion. It's a $40 billion entity there. So that would Dominic Perrottet, he was the treasurer before he became premier. So this would be considered one of his legacy as treasurer, and it would be a mess for his new treasurer to fix up Matt Keane, who's also the energy and environment minister, one of the blue greens in the New South Wales Liberal government.
Energy and environment, so he's completely useless. And yeah, just taking a closer look at those federal numbers, wages are forecast to grow 11.25% between now and 2024-25, which sounds amazing, until you see that inflation's tipped to grow by 10.25%. I don't think I even knew what inflation was when it was this high back in the early 80s. And that's an increase on the May budget, at which they expected those would increase by just 9% over the 4-year period. So the government's already spent $48 billion since the budget, including $25 billion to combat the Delta outbreak and another $16 billion in decisions taken but not yet announced.
Although the jobless rate, the official unemployment number went down from 5.2 to 4.6% with the Delta lockdowns ending. So I don't know if Frydenberg said this, but I can just imagine him saying this. The Australian economy is coming back, bouncing back. The expression here in Australia and the New South Wales Liberal government said this is bounce back better. We're going to bounce back better, not build back better, bounce back better.
Oh God! Well, that's just very, very depressing. If they're going to copy slogans from Joe Biden, especially when you see that Joe Biden, after a $1.9 trillion stimulus package just a couple of months ago, is now doing another $2.1 trillion one, which will include free kindergarten care for K2 to 5.
Yes, where the young can get indoctrinated early in mask culture and not talking to each other during the day, sitting outside in the freezing cold, eating lunch in silence.
Yeah, and the US debt to GDP ratio is now the same level that Greece had achieved before they got bailed out by the IMF.
Colin has asked about the new submarines costing $90 billion, and what is that now? Peter Dutton previously announced that the ADF is going to ditch its fleet of troubled Taipei helicopters a decade earlier than scheduled and replace them with Black Hawks from the US, and so that is obviously going to cost taxpayers more, apparently $7 billion. We've always had poor defence procurement in Australia, which is just costs the taxpayers more. Like we have
from a New Zealand standpoint, it's just amazing what Australia has.
Yeah, but what is it? The reason why we're so reliant on the U.S. military-industrial complex with it used to be the ANZUS treaty, but New Zealand has gone its own way, so it's the AUKUS alliance treaty now, we rely on the US and the UK military-industrial complex to basically bolster up our defences here.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable position for Australia to take. Population to what, about 30 million? Is 30 million?
And of course, these security alliances, they're not aimed at countering a specific nation. It's about, geopolitical security. But, we all know it's to try and contain communist China aggression.
Oh, and speaking of communist China aggression, you will have seen that there is a new political party being launched in Australia. I don't give them a hell of a lot of hope.
A new political party.
Yeah, God, that's not news in Australia, is it? This is going to be the Drew Pavlo Democratic Alliance. Drew Pavlo was suspended from Queensland University for 2 years for his anti-Chinese Communist Party activities.
And he was physically attacked by pro-CCP agitators at the University of Queensland.
That's right, yep. But today, today or yesterday, he's launched a party. It's been blessed by Buddhist monks. So, we've already seen what Buddhist monks versus Chinese adjutants leads to. So I suspect it's probably not going anywhere. I like the idea, but I think this is probably the last we'll ever hear of it.
Though we'll definitely hear from Drew Pavlo for many years to come. I mean, his party might not go anywhere, but he will continue with his anti-CCP activism for many years to come. I mean, he's only in his early 20s, and he dishes it right back to the CCP trolls who threaten him and his family. And he's actually a progressive, or a proper progressive, as we used to mean it. He's for civil liberties, obviously pro democracy, against the lockdowns, though he does support social justice issues like BLM and refugee rights as well. But as this article mentions, that he's been happy to receive the support of people such as Bob Katter. He's even donned the Bob Katter's a Kubra on many occasions. But yes, there's Heston Russell, who is the founder of the Voice of a Veteran lobby group, which lobbied for the Royal Commission into Veteran Suicide. He's also starting a political party, and we already have the existing minor parties: United Australia Party, Liberal Democrats, One Nation, Rod Culleton's Great Australian Party, and then still not registered, the Ricardo Bossi's Australia One Party.
Yeah, it seems like politicians in Australia are more interested in just being the name on a party than they are about actually doing some practical strategizing and condensing their numbers together into something that could actually achieve something.
Castle Match says, what do you make of Premier Don from New South Wales, Tim? Well, unlike the Victorian government, he did deliver the Freedom Day for New South Wales, which wasn't just getting rid of masks and QR codes in retail settings, but also ending the medical segregation. The vaxxed and unvaxxed can come together in public venues. There's still some restrictions on or vaccine passports in place for music festivals because, as we've seen with the Newcastle nightclub clusters and the gay nightclub clusters in Melbourne, they were only open to the fully vaccinated. Yet these dance music venues, they were super spreader events. So I don't get how restricting music festivals to the only vax is going to stop them being super spreader events.
They will probably find that the drug overdose deaths outnumber the COVID ones anyway.
Well, they'll probably have as many, COVID marshals at those events as they do drug sniffer dogs there as well, because, they tend to, the drug sniffer dogs detect around about 200 people, which they charge with drug offences. I mean, that's a whole other circus on its own.
And also back across the Tasman, Auckland Council went from being 7 councils to a single council back in 2010, very controversially. But one of the things that the national government at the time wasn't willing to do was to put in separate Māori seats. So instead it decided to have an independent Māori statutory board, which is appointed by mana whenua. Mana whenua basically being tribal representatives from Auckland, and they get to vote on some committees. So I would have thought that appointing a racial group to vote on committees would be even worse than democratically electing them. However, Mayor Phil Goff, who was a former leader of the Labour Party, has now decided that they're going to consult about adding 3 Māori seats to the governing body. He's only consulting with mana whenua and all those other hard to define terms, not the entirety of Auckland. But he wants to have 2 of those seats elected via Māori wards, where you must have Māori blood in order to vote, and then the 3rd one appointed by mana whenua anyway. So another appalling idea. And unfortunately, at the start of this year, without any warning whatsoever, the government changed the law so that 10% of voters can no longer make a petition to overturn these racist voting wards. So that'll probably come through in 2025.
Oh, well, back in Australia, there's this continued push for an Indigenous voice to Parliament, which many people are rightly concerned and alarmed over, given that it will basically work as a 3rd chamber of Parliament with a veto on legislation, and would also be a racist chamber of Parliament. The ABC today reported how that the drafting of an Indigenous voice to Parliament, the advisory. So the proposal was released by the federal government, which also advocated local and regional voices with an overarching national voice. This was by the Indigenous Affairs Minister, Ken Wyatt, at the federal level. So, yeah, that's...
So if they're asking for Indigenous voices, they're essentially saying that all Indigenous people think the same. So therefore, wouldn't the local and state and federal Indigenous people all think the same as well? It's clearly just bullshit bureaucratic window dressing.
Well, the Indigenous people that tend to get on these advisory bodies, they have the same groupthink. I mean, Ken Wyatt kicked off Josephine Cashman from one of his Indigenous advisory bodies a couple of years ago because...
she's the one from the Northern Territory, isn't she?
Oh, no, this is a different one. Josephine Cashman, a Indigenous lawyer, she blew the whistle on Bruce Pascoe's Dark Emu historical revisionist claims, and also that Pascoe claimed he was Indigenous as well. So she lost her position on that board because she basically blew the whistle on that book. So, it gives you an idea of who's allowed on these advisory committees and who's not.
Oh, well, it's only natural that if you're going to be on a racial committee, then you're essentially going to be a radical leftist anyway.
We're coming up to the end of the show. We're not going to go for another hour like we did with Dewey last Friday. Dewey decided, because it was his last show of 2021, to crack open the gin and go for another hour. I put the entropy link again. So if you want to ask a direct question, or even better yet, send through a super chat, Peter Gregory said that they killed Big Bird. Big Bird can never die. Only the puppeteers who play Big Bird can. I think it was Sebastian Gorka who said that Big Bird is not real, but myocarditis is.
Well, Wendy Morris, the Arizona state senator, has just recently labelled Big Bird a communist as well because he got vaccinated. And he also had a crack at New Zealand's Prime Minister.
Though, as I previously pointed out, Big Bird is supposed to be a bird, so shouldn't he be inoculated against bird avian flu? Like, I don't think that birds. He's not a bat, so I don't think birds can get. Though, what is it? What is it? Some animals, some hippos in Belgium got COVID, and what is it? There was a lab incident in Taiwan where a person got COVID from a mouse.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I have a theory that maybe the Count from Sesame Street was patient zero, given that he lives with a whole bunch of bats, or the COVID virus that also could have leaked from Muppet Labs when one of Dr. Bunsen Honeydew and experiments went wrong on Beaker and came out of the lab. We had Castle Match, sorry. Does New Zealand allow outbound international travel?
Yes, but it's very, very limited, and it really depends on the policies of the country that you're trying to travel to, and most of them still aren't opening up. But if you want to get back, that's a whole another kettle of fish, because there's tens of thousands of people waiting for MIQ places, and every few weeks the New Zealand government will announce that they're making some more places available, and it doesn't matter if you sat by your computer with a mouse and try to apply in the first second, you probably find you're about 1,000 people deep in the queue.
And what is it? So in 2022, they're going to slowly open the border, albeit with the caveat that 7 days home quarantine, which is who's going to go to New Zealand for a holiday if you're cooped up in the same place for 7 days. And now with the Omicron variant, you have the epidemiologists over there saying, I should delay the border reopening because of Omicron, because what is it? As we said, it's no longer a Delta elimination strategy in New Zealand, but Omicron elimination strategy. And we've already covered what Chris Hipkins said, that they reserve the right to bring back the alert level systems if they get freaked out by Omicron.
Yeah, and Ashley Bloomfield, who's the Director of Health, is also not ruling out recommending further lockdowns.
Which, even like the Delta outbreak, I mean, New Zealand is now recording less than 100 new cases per day on average, and the hospital admissions never went over 100, yet still shit scared that the hospital system is going to be overwhelmed.
Yeah, and even the areas which are still red on the traffic light system, one of the criteria for being red on the traffic light system is that there is a real and present danger of hospitals being overwhelmed by infections. There's nowhere in New Zealand where that's even been close to actually being the case.
Well, what is it? New South Wales Health, they put their hospitals on, red alert because of the thousands of daily cases now. Even though hospitalizations, they've only gone up to 225, and at the peak of the Delta wave, hospital admissions were over 1,000. But even more importantly, hospital ICU admissions are still really low. They're only 24 and 7 on a ventilator, and that's still like way lower than Victoria, which has 386 in hospital and over 100 in ICU. Yet everyone's freaking out in New South Wales because their hospitalizations went up a bit but their ICUs didn't, and it's still way lower than Victoria's.
Which just goes to show that the increasingly hands-off approach, and as well as vaccination, is actually probably the best way to manage this going forward. It seems that the more countries liberalise, with the exception of being the places going through winter at the moment, the quicker the cases come down.
Well, the cases are going to go up with Omicron, but rightfully the metrics to look at are hospital admissions and ICU. And even though South Africa's curve has gone like that, its hospital admissions have remained stable. They haven't, they're still on, the same restrictions, level 1 restrictions that they've always been at. And the hospital admissions for Omicron in the UK, they're at 15. They've still only had that one death, Omicron at 15, though, still predicting, because there's going to be a gazillion cases by Christmas that it could still overwhelm the hospital system. Brad Hazzard, the New South Wales Health Minister, got modelling from UNSW that said we could have 25,000 Omicron cases a day by late January. We'll see if that's another accurate model.
Yeah, no credibility left for the modelers anymore.
Well, they still pump them out, and the media still publish them and still interview the doomsday epidemiologists who are always recommending masks and social distancing. Like, they're getting a good run at the moment. It's madness that Dominic Perrottet is relaxing restrictions.
Yeah, from the Karens of Facebook, that's fuel to the fire for them, and well, at least gives them something else to do, because there's not much else for them to do while they keep themselves at home and follow the official advice to the extreme.
Yeah, double, triple mask in their basement bunker.
Yeah, if you can still hear them, they haven't masked up enough.
Thank you for this year, Stephen, and joining the Trad Tasman Talk family.
Thank you for having me.
The next scheduled fortnightly show would be on December the 31st, which is New Year's Eve. I'm not sure if you'd be up for a New Year's Eve, early New Year's Eve show, or whether you have plans or something. We'll think about it.
Not got plans.
But you're going to double, triple mask at home instead.
So we may see.
Oh, yes, we haven't heard an update about the guy who vaccinated himself 10 times. He was apparently taking other people's vaccines for them. He didn't actually get any extra protection, because that's not how vaccines work. The same as like wearing 10 masks doesn't help.
But apparently he's perfectly fine.
And yes, hopefully you don't get too much tortured by the Christmas carols. Apparently the most torturous song on repeat for retail workers is Mariah Carey's "All I Want for Christmas." I have noticed that retail outlets, they are playing that less now, obviously, because maybe the SDA and the United Workers Union complain, saying, this is a horrible working condition to play Mariah Carey on repeat. But I never get sick of hearing George Michael's "Last Christmas." That's probably the best Christmas contemporary Christmas song of all time.
There's two of them that wish it was Christmas every day. One of them is Queen.
Yes.
It just amuses me to think about the logistics and the reality of life if it were Christmas every day, because you'd be stuck with the family members that you wouldn't see any other day, and there would be nothing to eat and no gifts to buy, and you'd have no money.
Maybe that's why a lot of people are getting tested for COVID for Christmas, so they've got an excuse not to like and that. Sorry, I'd love to come and visit their aunts and cousins I see once a year, but sorry, down with the Delta or Omicron.
I'll keep that one up my sleeve.
So Merry Christmas to all of our regulars in the live chat this year. You make up half the show with your witty comments and also great questions as well. And
thank you for being so welcoming. And as I've joined Trad Tasman this year. Yeah,
they what is it? Obviously, they disagree with you on a lot, but they're not nasty to you. It's all in. All part of the robust discussion. And tomorrow there is yet another freedom rally in Melbourne because, there is still a medically segregated and state here in Victoria. So it's the Reclaim Your Dominion rally, which is going to be at Parliament House, marching to Flagstaff Garden. It's going to be a nationwide rally. Unite for the right to choose, because the vaccinated economy has been introduced in Queensland now, and also they've also slapped retail workers and shoppers with masks in Queensland as well. Not because the cases are increasing in Queensland, because they're increasing in New South Wales. Because that makes sense. Mm. All right, Merry Christmas, everybody, and we might see you before the new year. There'll be at least one show of something before the new year. That's when I'll wish you a happy new year. But please take care, stay safe and stay sane, be happy and enjoy the festive season as much as you can.
See you later.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of Trad Tasman Talk. To keep up with the latest real news and analysis from the Tasman nations, visit theunshackled.net and rightminds.nz.